Welcome. My name is Blair, and today I want to talk about surrogate modeling performance for building designs problems. This is part of my research at the University of Victoria and the Energy in Cities group. I specifically wanted to talk about a niche of this research, fitness landscape analysis. And it's a set of tools that help us sort of empirically understand how challenging data might be to model. I wanted to give credit to these two papers that some of the background of this presentation is from. My supervisor, Dr. Ralph Evans, contributed to both. I also wanted to give a shout out to my lab, the Energy in Cities group, which he leads, where we try to reduce the carbon footprint of cities through the three ways there at the bottom: building and energy system simulation, computational optimization, and machine intelligence. We try to be experts at surrogate models, which is a way that we can sort of simulate with machine learning, building simulation or energy system simulation. A better definition is a surrogate model is a computationally efficient approximation of a complex function, such as a physical simulation or an optimization algorithm. Surrogate models are widely used in machine learning to speed up the optimization process and reduce computational costs, while also providing insights into the behavior of the target function. So it has a lot to do with machine learning. All the familiar algorithms show up: gradient boosted trees, support vector machines, neural nets. But here I want to focus on that insights into the behavior. And for that, sometimes we like to use fitness landscape analysis. Fitness landscape analysis is a method used to study the relationship between the objective function and the parameters of an optimization algorithm. By analyzing the shape and structure of the fitness landscape, we can gain insights into the behavior of the optimization algorithm and its difficulty. So below is a list of fitness landscape analysis metrics. There's a whole bunch of other ones as well. Last year, this table I was able to hand you in Wolfram Mathematica to get a good understanding of them. The first two there are from Sobel analysis: the coefficient of variation and the degree of variable interaction. I would highly recommend that you use one of Python's well-maintained stats modules to evaluate those. It's much easier. And I'm going to look at some other ones that I use in my work: the fitness distance correlation, variance in fitness distribution, variance in state distribution, and the median autocorrelation, which is a type of random walk. Just to quickly introduce these algorithms, they are quite contrived. They just make a 3D surface, which is easy to sort of reason about. First, we have the plane function, spherical function, rasterization function, and it's well known because it has lots of local minima. And then I have two random functions. These are randomly generated but hard-coded here just so they can be reproduced easily. And this is what they look like. We have the plane function, the spherical function, rasterization function, and then the two random functions. And already we can see characteristics that might make these surface more difficult to find the minimum of. Some utility functions there. But first is the fitness distance correlation. There's sort of a formal description there, but the way I would describe it is that first you find the minimum point, and then you sort of sample that surface. And then you sort of measure the distance from that sample to the minimum. The theory being that there should be a correlation between the cost of that sample and its distance to the minimum. Smoother surfaces will have a high correlation in general, and more difficult to optimize surfaces will often, that relationship will break down. But this is a bit more how it looks. You can see here just that the plane, the color of the line represents its distance, and you can see there's a very high correlation between the minimum and a sample's distance to that minimum. It's highly correlated. Same with the spherical function. Surprisingly, the rasterization function, you can see many local minimums there, but when you take this type of evaluation, there's still a very high correlation. When you take the cost and its distance to the minimum, the relationship still stands. However, when you get to the random surfaces, that relationship breaks down and you see a much higher level of dispersion in those pair plots. because that relationship between cost and distance breaks down, and it can really be any distance depending on the cost. And that's what these plots are showing, and that's what's represented in the fitness distance correlation value. The variance of state is similar, and this is a way of measuring the variance in the input parameters. The theory being that if the costs are similar, all the input parameters around that group of costs should also be similar. Basically, how this is constructed is you sample the surface, and then you bin all those costs. It's going to be 5 bins, 10 bins. And then that formula there is applied to each bin. And basically what you're doing is you're finding the average, and then you're finding the distance to that average point in the bin to all the other samples that happen to be in that bin of similar costs. The idea being, if there's a lot of variance in the bin, that means that even though the costs are similar, there's a wide variance in the parameters that generate those similar costs. And that can be an important component of knowing and understanding how challenging a surface might be to optimize. So here we see actually the plane has quite a high variance. You can see here that the average of the variance is quite high because that yellow bin, some distances to the average are quite long and some are quite short. And when you take the variance of it, they can be quite high. The variance of state for the spherical function is quite low. You can see there in the red and dark blue bins, there's quite a lot of variance, but the other variances are very, 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 very low. The distance to the averages is very little variance. Rasterkin function is higher, and then our two random functions also have quite high variances of state because within a similar cost, there can be a wide range of input parameters that lead to similar costs. Next, I wanted to talk about the variance of cost. This is a bit more familiar, just about normal variance, but it's normalized so that we can compare amongst different problems. They turn out like this. You can also see we plot there the probability density function, and this is helpful to understand that if you were just to randomly sample the surface, what the probability would be that you just randomly sampled a minimal cost, which is important for how certain types of optimization algorithms work. You can see the surface there, the spherical function has quite a high variance and quite a bit of skewed towards high cost values as well. And you can also see the variance is also a bit higher in our completely random surfaces, and they're also skewed a bit more towards higher cost values. Lastly, we come to the autocorrelation. And this sort of takes a sequence and measures if there's a correlation or if there's a randomness detected in it. This also modifies it so that you sort of apply, you take the autocorrelation of all the legs up to the length of the sequence to make sure that there's no pattern sort of any different length in that sequence. And then you take the median value of that. This I also sort of applied a Monte Carlo method. So I did 250 random walks of 250 steps. And so what that gives you is these sorts of numbers. You can see sort of one representative random walk. You see our smooth surfaces have very, very, very small p-values, which means it's very easy to determine one step to another what the next value would be. But on more rugged surfaces, the autocorrelation is higher, the p-value is higher, and that means that from one step to another, it's harder to tell what the cost is going to be. That relationship starts to break down just to a simple random walk. So how this is applied is we apply this to buildings in much higher dimensions. This one has 13, but we can do 25, 50, and they're usually parameters like geometry, different characteristics of the building or mechanical systems, and also different types of scheduling and set points, all sort of contribute to how challenging a building might be to find the minimal energy cost for. Another thing is, as you get in higher dimensions, a lot of times these surfaces get much smoother, and there's not always a lot of interesting things happening. You can see how the input parameters looked, and then you usually have a cost function there that turns, when you have the training data for the surrogate model, it has sort of a many to one relationship. You might have a sense of conclusion, want me to state which fitness landscape metric is best. But a lot of times in practice in our lab, we talk about requiring different types of metrics to draw out different characteristics of the problem. And we even saw this in this short example, how the parameters didn't sort of all measure the same characteristics of the surface. Some is the correlation, and some sort of show how more rugged a surface is. But if you'd like more information about how this is applied specifically to building design problems, you'll have to wait for my paper, which comes out in the fall of 2023, Surrogate Modeling Performance for Building Design Problems. Thank you very much.